The triangle, the mystical triangle, even as I've called it, is a very, very interesting thing. The mystics from these old schools, they get ascribed meanings to various geometrical shapes, sort of squares, circles, whatever. And the triangle had a special meaning as well. The triangle has come to represent stability. Or at least for this webinar, I've come to represent it as stability. It can represent other things as well. But stability. Why? Why does it represent stability? It's because when you have one opposite thing and you have another opposite thing, those two things, when they come into balance, create a triangle. Now, it doesn't mean an equilateral triangle like we have here. It could be a triangle that's maybe slightly off to one side. But in any case, we have a point of balance. So, for example, let's say that you have a boss, and then you have someone who wants to work for a boss. And we tend to call them employees. When those two opposites come together, then there's a balancing point of a job. Are you with me so far? Not particularly hard to understand. Maybe to make it even a bit less mundane, I mean, you've got a man and you've got a woman. They come together. They have a balancing point of a relationship. Or even these days, it could even be a man or a woman. I mean, you know what I mean. But two people coming together create a third balancing point of the relationship. Now, what the mystics noticed is that they noticed this. They noticed that 1 + 1 is not equal to 2. Now, what do I mean by that? It's an interesting idea, but most people think if you have one thing and it comes together with another thing, then that's two things. No, it isn't. If you get one thing that's similar and you add it to another thing that's similar, now you've just got a bigger similar thing. So that's why I've got the word opposite here. In other words, if you have a boss here and you add another boss, now you've got two bosses, and neither of them wants to do any work, so you can't create a job. They're just sitting around doing what bosses do. I don't know what bosses do. Maybe they play golf or whatever. But you need then employees. So you need a kind of an opposite to create this balancing point. So 1 + 1 does not equal 2. So why is Mr. Stingray rambling about this? I mean, you came to learn about deadlines and he's talking about triangles and bosses and golf courses. What on earth has all this to do with manifesting, and especially manifesting to deadlines? Let me put you out of your misery right now. This is what it has to do with it. I shall give you a few seconds to gasp in wonderment at the fact that you still don't know what I'm talking about. Here's what I was talking about. A human being is a balancing point of the physical and the spiritual. Shock, horror. And genuinely, I think you should be shocked and horrified, because this is such an important point that very few people who are interested in these subjects, or even talk about them, or even teach them, mention. So many people get hung up on this spirituality thing and how to make this spirituality thing more powerful, that they forget that spirituality is really just one point of the human triangle. If you do not get your physicality handled, you will cease to exist as a human being. Seriously, you will cease to exist. When the physicality no longer exists, you don't exist either. So this thing here, This idea of the physical is a highly neglected, highly underrated key to spirituality. And what we talk about in the Manifesting Lab with all this manifesting stuff is spirituality, as you'll find out in a few moments. The point with this diagram is that if you want a huge amount of spiritual and you want your humanness to be such that it is stable, I have to suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, that you should think about being hugely physical as well. In other words, health-wise, fitness-wise, whatever you feel you need to become more of a physical being, a more strong, powerful physical being, you need to pay attention to that, because as you start to bring in these energy flows, these fast energy flows, these are going to rip your body apart.